Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Good morning, dear students and viewers. I, Jai Jivani, an assistant professor from Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, welcome you at our Chaitanya studio on behalf of Department of English. And today, for series on Western literary criticism, we have Dr. Prerna Malhotra with us. She has been associated with Delhi University. She is teaching for more than 18 years. She is a writer, translator, and she has also been panelist for various platforms. We welcome you at our studio, ma'am. And today she will be talking on Areopagitica. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jay. It's my pleasure to be here again. Greetings of the day. Today we are going to talk about Areopagitica. Areopagitica. It's pronounced in different ways. It's a speech for the liberty of unlicensed printing. It was pronounced by John Milton to the Parliament of England in 1644. And you know that in 1644, Charles I was the ruler. So what is this pamphlet about? It's a critical document on freedom of speech and expression, which is a term which we have been using these days multiple times. And the idea of ancient Greek democracy has been invoked through this pamphlet. It is considered a pioneer work on free speech, freedom of expression. And the title has been taken from Greek mythology, where it's a mountain where the Council of Athens had meetings. There is a background to this work, and the background is that in 1643, June 1643, an ordinance was passed in the Parliament of England, which was related to regulating printing. It was exactly 14th June 1643 when this ordinance was brought by both the Houses of Parliament, the Lords and Commons, for regulating press. It specifically laid down rules for printing, for stringent censorship. The licensing order, it was named in such a way, and it was kind of reintroduced almost, it had all the stringent censorship machinery which was there in 1637. So it was reintroduced. So it was related to pre-publication licensing. It was related to registration of all printing materials with the names of the author, the printer, and publisher in the register at Stationers' Hall. That was one authority which was chosen by the Parliament. And it was given a kind of right to search and seize and destruct the material from the publisher's place or from the author's place. So it was a kind of, offensive document which was brought by the government to arrest, to imprison any of the offensive writers, printers, publishers. So it gave wide-ranging power to the Parliament through this authority of the order. And one company which was chosen was the Stationers' Company, which was given the responsibility of acting as censor. These days, you know, we have censor board. The same way it was a censor in return for a monopoly of the printing trade. But these days, the censor board has some other rules and regulations. When films are made, when books are written, then they can be censored. Books, of course, cannot be censored in today's India, but then any book, pamphlet, paper, or any part of such book or pamphlet or paper in that order, it could be printed and bound and stitched or put to publication solely by the person or persons who was who had to get it sanctioned, approved by the licensing authority. So those huge powers lay with that authority. And I am reading it from that order, that what will be done by that authority. Both the houses shall appoint an authority for the licensing of the same, and entered in the register book of the Company of Stationers. This is the company which was deputed. And this company was supposed to take action according to the ancient custom, and the printer thereof to put his name there too. Exactly the lines are which I am going to read again. This company is authorized and required from time to time to make diligent search in all places where they shall think meet for all unlicensed printing presses, and all presses anyway employed in the printing of scandalous or unlicensed papers, pamphlets, books, or any copies of books belonging to the said company, or any member thereof, without their approbation and consents, and to seize and carry away such printing. This is the exact wording from that order. And they could take away everything, the nut, spindle and other materials which they thought that they were related to the irregular printing, and they could also take diligent search in all suspected places, all printing houses, warehouses, shops, or wherever they thought, any other places wherever such scandalous and unlicensed books could be found. Not just books, as I mentioned, books, papers, pamphlets, and all other books which are not entered, not signed with the printer's name, as aforesaid in the order. So this was the kind of order, and it gave wide-ranging power to captains, constables, and other officers to let this order be implemented. And they were required to be aiding and assisting to the persons who were to execute this order. So you can understand that for a writer like John Milton, he thought that this was offensive, highly offensive. And of course, he opposed this because the wide-ranging powers which were given to this one company to open doors and locks and break them and all that, this was too much. It is in this background that Milton wrote this speech. Moreover, it was distributed as a pamphlet after 16 months of the institution of the ordinance in 1644. So one needs to understand about Milton's political ideology as well, political background as well. He was a Protestant who stood against ordinance of the Parliament, and this was, as I said, related to pre-publishing approvals and licensing. So he had the guts, he had the courage to speak against censorship, and he himself had faced censorship previously on his ideas on divorce. Milton was ahead of his times. He talked of divorce in those days. He talked of very radical ideas in his writings. So he addresses this pamphlet to the Court of Parliament, which consists of Lords and Commons both. And through this treatise, Milton becomes the first English writer to talk about civil liberty, to talk about freedom of press. When he says, when complaints are freely heard, deeply considered, and speedily reformed, then is the utmost bound of civil liberty attained that wise man look for. So this is the kind of liberty, civil liberty, which he is going to talk about. And he opposed the order relating to regulating printing and making an appeal to repeal the act, repeal the ordinance. He chides the parliamentarians on why they could not think of the magnanimity of ancient Greece and the high esteem the scholars, the men of wisdom and words, the men of eloquence they had, and they enjoyed freedom, they enjoyed liberty in writing what they wanted to write because they were guided by their wisdom, not by the state. That was the ancient Greek, so he is talking of the Greek setup, Greek political state. So Milton makes a strong argument at the very outset as he opposes the order and lays down grounds for doing so. So there are arguments in support of it, in support of his argument. What he says, I shall now attend. This is the first line. I shall now attend with such a homily as shall lay before ye first the inventors of it to be those whom ye will be loath to own. Next, what is to be thought in general of reading, whatever sort the books be, and that this order avails nothing to the suppressing of scandalous, seditious, and libellous books. These were the contentions that were intended to be suppressed, but Milton makes it very clear that the intentions of the order cannot be implemented on all grounds. So he supports a part of that order. He understands that the greatest concern which the church and the commonwealth, the state and religion both feel, the concern is to keep a vigilant eye on how books demean themselves and the men. I'm quoting it from Milton himself. And thereafter to confine, imprison, and to do sharpest justice on them as malefactors. So Milton makes a strong case for the imperishable treasure of books. I have seen some of the quotations which have been taken from this work, the text of this work. They have been inscripted on libraries also. On one of the libraries, I saw this quote from the pamphlet, for books are not absolutely dead things, but do contain a potency of life in them to be as active as that soul was whose progeny they are. Nay, they do preserve as in a vial the purest efficacy and extraction of what living intellect that bred them. Yes. So books are that important treasure house. A library is a treasure house where such books remain, and with them remains the intellect intact of the people who created them. So it's a very, very important that books are very, very critical and they should not be killed. And what he says, who kills a man kills a reasonable creature, God's image, but he who destroys a good book kills reason itself, kills the image of God as it were in the eye. So no one can justify killing an idea through a book. Many a man lives a burden to the earth, but a good book is the precious life blood of a master spirit, embalmed and treasured up on the purpose to a life beyond life. So this is what a book is according to Milton. And Milton compares the killing of book to homicide, massacre, and martyrdom. These are high words which he uses for killing a book, killing an idea. I am quoting from that particular line. We should be wary, therefore, what persecution we raise against the living labors of public men, how we spill that seasoned life of man preserved and stored up in books, since we see a kind of homicide may be thus committed, sometimes a martyrdom, and if it extends to the whole impression, a kind of massacre, whereof the execution ends not in the slaying of an elemental life, but strikes at that ethereal and fifth essence, the breath of reason itself, slays an immortality rather than a life. So, the killing of a book cannot be justified in any ways, and that too before the idea has come into the world, before the idea has taken birth. So he is against this order, and he is going to make arguments. He is going to defend free printing of books. At least the books must be printed. And he writes, it will be primarily to the discouragement of all learning and the stop of truths, not only by disexercising and blunting our abilities in what we know already, but by hindering and cropping the discovery that might be yet further made. It could be both in religious and civil wisdom. So this is what he believes, that ideas must not be killed, whether in the religious field or the secular fields. And this is about true liberty. When men are born free, when humans are born free, then why shouldn't they be made to speak free? What can be juster in a state than this polemic prose which he has written? While speaking about liberty of freedom of expression, he built a strong argument. He talks of censorship. He talks of printing of books and other issues through the ages, and discloses the status of the publication of books in the Britain of those times. As I said, that he was a Protestant, a believer of faith in Protestant church, and a politician writer himself. So Milton, while speaking directly to the majority of Protestant parliament members, he refers to the Roman Catholic Church and Spanish Inquisition obliquely, and calls them inventors of censorship. So this is the charge which has been leveled multiple times against Milton, that he talks of freedom of press. While doing it, he is targeting only the Roman Catholic Church and not the Protestants. And he has an agenda when he was speaking about censorship. Still, we are going to quote again. I'm quoting this line: to fill up the measure of encroachment, their last invention was to ordain that no book, pamphlet, or paper should be printed. So this is the charge which has been leveled against Roman Catholics of the times, that they have done this. They have made approvals mandatory, and they have made licensing mandatory even before the publishing of books. And that authority has been given to glutton friars, just to a few glutton friars, and he makes some examples about that what kind of comments are given by such church peoples, and they just write single sentences why that book should be published or that should not be published. So Milton believes that they are not the people who are an authority on all kind of subjects, that they decide about that whatever is being published is right or wrong, and they might have their own subjective notions on it. So some people may write about Catholic faith, some might write about good manners, and some might write about other issues. So how could these people who hardly know of those subjects, some of the subjects, how can they pronounce their judgment on all these issues which are being printed through books or pamphlets or other forms of writing. So he has quoted certain comments which have been made in the past about certain books, and simply like this book can be printed. This is what their comment is. So some Vincent will make this comment, some will write it cannot be printed, it may be printed. So that is what a whole lot of subjectivity may enter into publication. So what to say of the judgment of the writer? What to say of the ideas of a person who has the capability and wisdom to write a book? So that person must be intelligent enough. But anyways, the points which are made before the parliamentarians are accusations of the Roman Catholic Church and the points related to censorship in England. So he compares, through this pamphlet, he compares the birth of a book to a human baby's birth. Milton exhorts the birth of a book to be free, without any hindrance, and that used to be the case before the order was passed. This is what he feels. And particularly in the ancient Greece, books were ever as freely admitted into the world as any other birth. The issue of the brain was no more stifled than the issue of the womb. So whether it's religion and censorship, whether it's God who has given humans the reasons to judge good and bad, and therefore question good and bad, and question the questioning is a kind of, trusting, rather not trusting the God's will. So he feels that censorship will be against God's authority. This is what he says, and I'm quoting from this pamphlet again. Read any books, whatever come to thy hands, for thou art sufficient both to judge aright and to examine each matter. So God has bestowed us reason to judge good and bad. God uses not to captivate under a perpetual childhood of prescription, but trusts with the gift of reason to be his own chooser. So every time we are not prescribed, rather we have our own reason to read a book and then decide whether that book is good or that book is useful for us or not, whether that book is excellent, whether that is culpable, or whether that work will be good for us or not. So that all depends on our own wisdom, readers' wisdom, or the people who are going to have those ideas propagated. So multiple books get printed, we get hold of many, and some of them we find that they are appropriate, they are good, they help us in developing humans in spiritual ways or in other ways. So that is what the God has given us, that kind of power, and no one should have that kind of control on publication of books, like the way one company which was authorized by the Parliament of England to have such kind of authority to not let any poet, any author get published. Good and evil, moreover, they are inextricably linked within books and in humans too. So they go together. And he quotes the story of Adam and Eve. Adam came to know of good and evil after tasting the forbidden fruit. So God is accused many a times that why Adam was given the freedom to choose. They might complain that divine providence of suffering was bestowed on Adam. Why was he allowed to transgress? Why? When God gave him reason, he gave him freedom to choose. For reason is what, but in a way it's choosing. He had been else a mere artificial Adam, such as an Adam as he is in the motions. So this is the plea which Milton makes, that whatever he did, whatever Adam did was not out of obedience or of love as a gift, but God left him free. He set before him a provoking object which made him choose what he wanted to choose. And he gave him the reason, and on the basis of his merit, he got the reward, or he was, you can call it reward, or because of that sin, he had to sort of, that he had to remain, he was banished from the heaven. But a strong case has been made by Milton, wherein he says that who imagined to remove sin by removing the matter of sin? This is very, very important. A very quotable line. Who imagined to remove sin by removing the matter of sin? It is not possible. So, evil and good, they must go together, hand in hand. And he says that they make a company like a husband and a wife, a man and a wife. Reason can be used to make the distinction. Good and evil, we know in the field of this world, they grow up together almost inseparably, and the knowledge of good is so involved and so interwoven with the knowledge of evil. So they go hand in hand. This is what Milton talks of. And he asks a question further. He has a question to the parliamentarians, both of Lords and Commons. He says, as therefore the state of man now is, what wisdom can there be to choose? What continence to forbear without the knowledge of evil? He that can apprehend and consider vice with all her baits and seeming pleasures, and yet abstain, and yet distinguish, and yet prefer that which is truly better. He is the true warfaring Christian. So, he also makes a case for a true Christian, a true religious person who can make good and bad in the face of when evil is spread out before him as a lure, as a bait, and still he remains with the good. So that is what a true Christian should be doing. This is what he says. So promiscuous books, even they cannot be termed unreligious, as they too lead humans to know what to avoid in leading a virtuous life. So when evil is around us, we must be able to know that this is evil and we have to escape that. The knowledge and survey of vice is in this world so necessary to the constituting of human virtue. कहते हैं कि दिन और रात साथ साथ चलते हैं. And you know that without a night you cannot understand the value of a day. So how can one identify evil, sin and falsity from truth? That reason has been bestowed by God to humans. So this is Milton, who is talking about truth, who is talking of value of books, who is talking of even promiscuous books, that they should also come in market they should also be available to people to read. So, with the logic of stopping flow of all evil, books cannot be censored, and Milton makes the case of even the Bible itself. He says that many a times some of the things are related to, some of the nice things have not been said in the Bible itself. So, some of the carnal things which are done by wicked people and which are not elegant. So, those things are said about the Bible and against the providence. And so, in that case, should Bible also be censored? So, that is what one question he makes about the religion also. So, some of the things, it's up to interpretations. A common reader might interpret it in that ways. So, for these causes, we all know the Bible itself put by the papist, but by the papist into the first rank of prohibited books. This is what Milton says. So, shall Bible be prohibited because common people might interpret it in different ways? The uneducated, ignorant people are moreover, he makes another argument, and that argument is that it's not only about the people who read books, who are educated. Don't you think that even uneducated, ignorant people are vulnerable, and they are fed more dangerous things about religion than who read such books? So, that is again one argument which he is making. And he says it will be hard to instance where any ignorant man has ever been seduced by a papistical book in English unless it were commended and expounded to him by some of that clergy. So, who is responsible if some wrong message through a book goes, or some wrong idea is propagated in the society? So, many a times it is the clergy who is responsible and not those people who are now having those ideas after getting them. So, those books and those in great abundance which are likely to taint both life and doctrine, they cannot be suppressed without the fall of learning and of all ability in disputation. So, as earlier it was said that killing of a book will be like killing a human, killing a kind of massacre. So, this order is inadequate on multiple grounds. This is another argument which he makes, and he talks of those multiple grounds on which this order would prove to be fruitless and defective. He challenges the parliament that they have created this order to have certain desired kind of results in their mind, but they are not going to be successful in that. So, the first argument he makes is that evil manners are perfectly learnt without books in 1,000 other ways which cannot be stopped. And evil doctrine not with books can propagate except a teacher guide. Anywhere it may happen, which he might also do without writing, and so beyond prohibiting. He says, I am not able to unfold how this Cotelius enterprise of licensing can be exempted from the number of vain and, impossible attempts. There are multiple ways through an idea can propagate. It's not just the learned men who are the receivers of the books and who are the ones who spread vice and error. So, how shall the licensors themselves be confided in unless we can confer upon them, or they assume to themselves above all others in the land the grace of infallibility and incorruptedness. So, corruption, fallibility are very much possible in the clergy who propagate, who spread the evil thoughts. So evil thoughts, as I said, that they can be spread through innumerable ways. Only printing material can be controlled through this order. But can this order control spread of such ideas through music, through arts, through other arts? They still remain uncontrolled. So if we think to regulate printing, thereby to rectify manners, we must regulate all recreation and pastimes, all that is delightful to man. No music must be heard, no song be set or sung, but what is grave and Doric. This is what I have quoted from Milton. In that case, do that if that is possible. Control everything. Control what people wear. Control what is being sung. Control the motions of dance. Control everything. So then licensor also may have a problem, because as I said that he might not have that kind of authority. So this kind of censorship will also harm scholars and scholarship, because scholarship is essential to be propagated in society, but this kind of censorship will control that, will kill that. And he says that it is going to be problematic. This order is going to be problematic in the years. The parliamentarians might have listened to him, might have heard to him, but of course what we know is for a long time they did not repeal it. They did not repeal the act. So whether it is the arrogance of the licensor, whether it is the judgment of the licensor, they all are the questions which come in the way of truth and censorship. Truth and censorship was a topic which is related even today, which is relevant even today. So love learning for itself, not for the service of God, not for any other end but the service of God and of truth. And the state through this ordinance is solely responsible for control of ideas. State shall be my governors, this is what he says, but not my critics. They may be mistaken in the choice of a licensor as easily as this licensor may be mistaken in an author. So this is common stuff. And he might add from Sir Francis Bacon, he has quoted one line that such authorized books are but the language of the times. For though a licensor should happen to be judicious more than ordinary, still that can jeopardize the entire this propagation of ideas, and his office might produce some kind of hurdle in generation of ideas when they stop publication of books. When licensing is made necessary before publishing of a book without going into the content of the book, so this order could be problematic, because there could be a situation like an author, he had got the license and then he realizes, he feels that he has to add something. Then how to do that? Or it might happen that some of the things are not clear to the licensor himself. So it should be left to reason, it should be left to free will, because books cannot be suppressed without the fall of learning. Learning is important. Scholarship is important. That Milton here is making the case for free speech, for freedom of expression. But this essay is one of the controversial ones. He talks of faith and knowledge and how they thrive by exercise, and suppression of books might hamper this exercise, and truth particularly, knowledge particularly, is suppressed. So knowledge suppressed is like a stream, a fountain, and her waters, if they are not allowed to flow in a perpetual progression, so they sicken into a muddy pool of conformity and tradition, which Milton thinks is a problem. And Parliament's licensing order does just that, as Milton claims, by controlling and mandating what is read and learnt. A man may be a heretic in the truth, and if he believes things only because his pastor says so, or the assembly says so, or the assembly determines, without knowing other reason, though this belief be true, yet the very truth he holds might not be true. So Milton gives a warning that it might become just a hearsay. And hearsay is always a detriment of truth. Truth which cannot be suppressed. Truth cannot be suppressed by orders and statutes. Truth and understanding, they are not such wares as to be monopolized. They are not such wares as to be traded in by tickets and statutes and standards. We must not think to make a staple commodity of all the knowledge in the land, to mark and license it like our broad clothes and our wool packs. So Milton in strong words gives a warning that when truth is bound, as it is by Parliament's order, then she speaks not true, but instead turns herself into all shapes except her own. It is not impossible. This is the warning. Milton contends that truth may have more shapes than one, and many a times that shape is not of truth. I am quoting, it's next alleged that we must not expose ourselves to temptations without necessity, and next to that, not employ our time in vain things. So, to both these objections, one answer will serve, and that is, out of the grounds already laid, that to all men such books are not temptations, nor vanities, but useful drugs and materials. So, Milton provides an effective way out of this, looking back to ancient Greek systems where censorship did not exist for a long time. And he says that who knows not that truth is strong next to the Almighty. Truth is very, very important, and it must be protected at all costs. And truth does not need any policies, nor stratagems, nor licensings to make her victorious. And he makes a defense of that truth which might be used even against power. So Parliament's practice of suppressing books is the worst and newest opinion of all others, and is the chief cause why sects and schisms do so much abound. So this is another allegation which he says that why true religion is not being followed, it is because of such kind of licensing, such kind of stifling. So he claims that errors in a good government and in a bad are equally almost incident. And he entreats Parliament. He says that to redress willingly and speedily what has been erred. So the Parliament must repeal this order, the licensing order of 1643. And if I go back to the beginning of this text, It says, I'm again quoting from the text, it was the task which I began with, to show that no nation or well-instituted state, if they valued books at all, did ever use this way of licensing. And it might be answered that this is a piece of prudence lately discovered. So this is the charge which he laid in the beginning. And he says that, see the ingenuity of truth, who, when she gets a free and willing hand, opens herself faster than the pace of method and discourse can overtake her. So truth goes faster. I don't know. I have heard of something कि जब तक सच कहीं घूम कर आता है, झूठ बहुत दूर दूर तक चला जाता है. Anyways, I mean, this is what Milton says. I am not endorsing what he says. So historical precedents from Greece and Rome, they have been taken to justify Milton. He uses them. He uses that they had mechanism to deal with such kind of libellous content if they found, but then this such kind of project of licensing was not there. It has been recently introduced in England. About Greece, he says that they had such kind of blasphemous and atheistical or libellous content, but they had their own ways to deal with that. There also you will find that there were orders to burn books by courts, whether they were religious or not. But there is a difference in pre-publication licensing and burning of books after reading it. So he challenges the ministers who are present there that it reflects to the disrepute of our ministers who have made such kind of law, who have made a skewed law which makes stringent kind of censorship, which is not at all acceptable, at all acceptable. This is what he says, that our parliamentarians, they must learn something from the Greek, from the Romans, the classics, and the writers, the critics of that time. So he says that after reading of content, books may be burnt, there may be ways to deal with it. So he is again going to sort of, put allegations against the Catholic authorities during Inquisition, as I said. So this is what he talks of. Books were banned during the Greek time. Hearsay was prevalent in that time also, and individual reasons were given in defense of knowledge of all types and individual virtues. So free will should prevail, reason should prevail, thought should be allowed to come out, books of all types, whether good or evil, should be allowed to come out. Forbidden books even, they may teach certain things, so they should be allowed to be printed. Truth may be learnt even through bad books. God has given us qualities of rationale. God has given us the quality of reasoning, who as readers can differentiate what is good and what is bad. So somebody need not prescribe thoughts for us. Somebody must not stifle our thoughts. So he talks of liberty, civil liberty in those times. But how much he practiced, how much Milton practiced out of this is again questionable. And how much truth was he actually speaking? Was he just not targeting the Roman Catholics? Was he actually interested that such kind of censorship should not exist? And he, of course, he made a strong point that ideas may spread in society through multiple ways, and reading of books is one of them. So keeping a vigilant eye on books is important, but killing a book is no solution. So in today's scenario, we can compare it to cancel culture, where books are not allowed to publish, where lectures are not allowed to happen. So licensing is unfair to authors. This is one point. While I sum up, I must say. So this order is arbitrary, it is subjective, and the people who are controlling it have all the authorities. So it cannot have good consequences. It cannot control blasphemous content. It cannot, they may, what the solution could be, that the blasphemous content can be published and later it may be destroyed. And a state which is governed by the rules of justice and fortitude, or a church built and founded upon the rock of faith and true knowledge, should not indulge into such kind of pusillanimous act. I'm quoting this term pusillanimous from Milton. So what should be the duty of the parliamentarians now? Should they suppress all kind of flowery crop of knowledge? And is it sure that such kind of ideas won't be generated then? So shall 20 people form a kind of oligarchy against our minds? Shall all the ideas be suppressed? One person might like an idea and the other might not. That is another question. And he addresses the Lords and Commons, all the parliamentarians of both the houses, that suppressing won't bring such good results, neither to the suppressors, nor to the authors, nor to the scholars, nor to the scholarship, nor to the truths. And regulating the press is not going to help anyone. No person will be benefited out of it. This is the plea which he makes, and this order is not going to help anyone. So the better, the sooner it is taken back, it is repealed, and this is actually what he means to say, that this is something which is not beneficial for the health of a state, for the health of a society. So any mischievous or libellous content or thought can be dealt with through multiple ways, but not through such kind of stringent censorship. There are multiple remedies which are available, which can be used, and maybe some other countries may be looked for, where such kind of issues are dealt with in a better way. So one is the ancient Greek method, the stateship there, or even in this country, a law like Star Chamber Decree. So that was also, in a way, it was a good one, and that can be followed. So Milton himself had to suffer a lot. Later on, when Charles II, he came to power in 1660. So what had happened? That Milton's own books were burnt. Nevertheless, this document, it could not convince the parliament, and a bill was brought in 1689, many years afterwards. His plea that free will is the right of individual. So Milton was a radical, and his ideas have contemporary relevance, and it has a relevance even in the 21st century, but it also makes certain questions, makes certain tensions, that if such kind of free will is allowed, free publication is allowed, what impact will it have in the society when you cannot control the propagation of the thoughts. So Milton was talking of free will in the 17th century. And as I said, that ironically, Milton's own 2 books were burned in Charles II's reign. He himself became a victim of the same order. And the challenges or the tensions which he talks of, they remain relevant even in the 21st century. And some of his thoughts may help us, but yes, we must look into what his political thoughts were, what his ideology were, what his propaganda was, and he has been charged multiple times of such kind of propaganda. Thank you so much.